In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the updated NHL standings and making some playoff predictions based on what the playoff matchups would be if they started today. We'll discuss the playoff predictions coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we've been doing this video every so often throughout the season, usually every 3 to 4 weeks, kind of take a look at the updated standings, talk about if the playoffs started today, who would win each original matchup, and who would be my pick for the Stanley Cup. Because based on the matchups, I think the path to the conference final and the cup final definitely changes. We've seen some teams go up and down in the standings. Some teams are in or out. The matchups definitely look a little bit different than the last time we looked at this. This is also the first time we've looked at this since the NHL trade deadline, so some of these rosters are different, and even though some of these teams haven't played a lot of games since they made their moves, it certainly influences my opinion on where they may or may not go for the end of the year and into the playoffs. So let's take a look at the standings here and where things would go. Let's start with the Western Conference. As of right now, based on the standings, we would see the Winnipeg Jets and the Vancouver Canucks would be your top two seeds, with Vancouver being number 1, Winnipeg being number 2. So that would give us a matchup of the Vancouver Canucks going against Vegas. Imagine getting first overall in the Western Conference, winning your division, and your reward is you get the Vegas Golden Knights in the round 1 of the playoffs. That is not good luck at all. And to be honest, with the moves that Vegas has made, we don't know the status of Mark Stone. Tomas Hertl was acquired. They get Noah Hanifin. I don't like that matchup for the Canucks, but we'll get into that here in a little bit. But what a, unfortunate set of circumstances for the top team here to get a now loaded, likely healthy team like that in the playoffs. So Winnipeg as the number 2 seed, the top of the Western Conference's Central Division, at least for right now. It's very, very tight. Winnipeg, Colorado, Dallas are all tied. The Jets right now have the top tiebreaker, but that could change every day. But right now they have the top spot, and they get Nashville. And as much as Nashville's played really good hockey the last probably 15 games or so, and they will not be an easy opponent, I think they'll take them over Colorado or Dallas. So Winnipeg would play Nashville. Then the 2-3 seeds would be Colorado versus Dallas, which, like I said, would be an absolute slobber knocker of a series. Whoever those two teams end up being in that Central Division, not going to be a reward at all for finishing top 3. And then we also have the Edmonton Oilers doing battle once again for the third time with the Los Angeles Kings. So let's go through each of these, and I'll give you my predictions. Now, Vancouver versus Vegas. Like I said, I do not like this matchup for the Vancouver Canucks. They've had a really good season. There's been lots to be happy and optimistic about. Rick Tocchet, as the first full season as head coach, has done some really good things. He's likely going to be a finalist, if not maybe even the winner of the top Coach of the Year trophy. But at the end of the day, the Vegas Golden Knights, if they're healthy, I think they will beat Vancouver handily. The decor on them, they have huge guys. They got big size, very mobile, lots of experience back there. You've already got Pietrangelo, Theodore, you got Hagen, Whitecloud, Martinez, and then you add Noah Hanifin. Those guys can skate. They've got speed. They've got size. They can hit. Lots of experience back there. It might be the best blue line in the NHL. And it might have been without Hanifin, to be honest, if they're healthy. And Braden McNabb in there as well. Also, I didn't mention him. Just a phenomenal decor there. And then, of course, they add Tomas Hertl up front. We don't know about Mark Stone. Obviously, that's going to be a big factor, but they have a lot of firepower even without him. So you look at Vancouver, you get Demko in the net, who's really, really good, but I worry about his workload getting into the playoffs. I know take a look at the Pettersson, Miller, Besser have been really good this year. Not always playing together. They had a good stretch together, but they mostly play separate. But I don't know. A lot of these guys don't really have that playoff experience. A few of them have some. The decor, definitely not as good. Aiden Hill versus Thatcher Demko. Normally I'd give Demko an edge, but look at what Hill did in the playoffs last year. I don't know. I think overall the the D core might be the big difference here. And I would take Vegas to win that series. I don't know how far it would go. It might go 6, could go 5. Unfortunately, I think the phenomenal, I don't know what you want to call it, but the resurgence or whatever of the Canucks could come to a very quick stop in this year's playoffs. And after having a really solid regular season, if they get Vegas as a first round opponent, I think they might be doomed. But to be honest, the way things have been going, I'm not 100% convinced they're going to be first. And I'm not sure that you'd want to be first knowing that there's a good chance your opponent's going to be Vegas. I mean, looking at the games in hand, the schedule, there's a possibility Edmonton could pass Vancouver and grab that division title. Yeah. Are they going to want to, though, is the question, knowing that who's likely waiting for them. But if the matchup stayed this way, I would pick Vegas over Vancouver. In the Edmonton-LA matchup, again, Edmonton, I would pick them to be the winners for the third straight time. They've proven before that they can handle the Kings. The Kings are a little bit different. The Oilers are a little bit different. I think the Oilers will be better defensively than they used to be. They're still not as good defensively as some of these teams for sure, but they do have the firepower up front. They've added some experienced two-way player like Adam Henrique. Carrick will come in and obviously, help with the toughness. They've got a good amount of depth, really, at both the defense and forward groups. This Oilers team, I do think, will be able to take on and defeat the Kings. The Kings don't have great goaltending, in my opinion. The Oilers may not have awesome goaltending either, but it's adequate enough that if that's even, the Oilers should be able to greatly outscore the Kings and take the series. But the Kings will definitely give them a good run. They always do. They do know how to play them really tough and tight, but the Oilers always seem to overcome, even though it's not going to be by a big margin. So Vegas and Edmonton would win both of those series through the Pacific part of the bracket here and meet in round 2. On the other side, you get Winnipeg versus Nashville. I will take the Jets to beat the Preds. The Preds will be a tough out. They played really good hockey down the stretch here to get himself in a more secured playoff spot. But Winnipeg has one of the best decors, phenomenal goaltending, and up front they've been really solid. So I just don't know that Nashville can beat them, and that kind of when you look at breaking it down that way. Saros is good, but I think the tandem of Hellebuck and Brossoit is better. I mean, we may not see anything but the starting goalies here, and if you get a Hellebuck versus Saros matchup, that's pretty darn close. But I'd give a slight edge to Hellebuck based on how they're playing this year. Defensively, I think I like the Jets a little bit better. And offensively speaking, I like the Jets a bit better too. So I do think they can take down Nashville. But I think Nashville would give them a heck of a run and be at least a 6-game series. Colorado versus Dallas, as I said, could be really tough. That could be a coin toss. Could be a 7-game series. I'm taking Colorado. Mainly, I like their moves at the deadline. I really like the addition of Middlestat. They moved on from Johansson. They added some good bottom 6 guys like Duhaime. I really think that they're a more complete team. They get Nishushkin back from the player assistance program. He's been good. Obviously, their blue line, a little bit different back there with Walker added to the mix. So I really like the moves that they've made. Now, Dallas made some moves as well, adding Tanev, for example. But I like the Avalanche better. Well, like overall, Dallas and Jake Ottinger has concerned me. He hasn't been as good as he normally has been in this last stretch, and it's been a longer stretch than we've seen of him in the past struggle. So I don't know. You have that Avalanche attack coming at you. I just don't know that they can overcome that. And Dallas is a really good team, and I can see them winning a few games here, but I think the Avalanche take that series. Now, I think the Winnipeg Jets might be a better matchup for Dallas and Colorado, although I do personally think that the Stars will be in tough no matter who their opponent turns out to be. So that would set up a second-round matchup of the Winnipeg Jets and the Colorado Avalanche, which would be a really tough series as well. So we get the Jets and the Avs, the Oilers and the Golden Knights. Let's look at Edmonton-Vegas here first. I'm going to pick the Oilers to win. But it's mainly because I just think that they are way stronger. When it comes to slowing down, like McDavid, Draisaitl, I think that's a much tougher job than what we're going to see with Vancouver. Not to take any, add any disrespect to Vancouver's top elite forwards. Obviously Miller, Besser, Pettersson, they're all really, really good. Overall, though, I think the Vegas Golden Knights would be. I don't know. I just think Edmonton here. I think they're just too solid offensively. Really, like goaltending wise, I think it would be a good matchup. Skinner against Hill. That could be a wash. Now the Vegas blue line would cause a lot of problems for Edmonton, and I do think that they would certainly slow down the Oilers' offensive juggernaut as well. But I don't know if they can slow them down enough. The other thing with Vegas is they do have a lot of players that are, have a lot of history of getting injured a lot. They've dealt with a lot of injuries, which is why they're way over the cap. Whether or not Stone is there, Hurdle's obviously been out an extended time. Jack Eichel's had his fair share. How healthy are they going to be? And we still have a good stretch of regular season to get through. If they go through a tough series against the Canucks, that could, you never know what teams are going to be dealing with. That's hard to predict, but it's going to be a tough, tight series. I'm taking Edmonton to win now over the Golden Knights. And I will pick the Avalanche to beat the Jets. But again, that's really close. The Avalanche and the offensive firepower will be tested against the tight, very strong defensive team in Winnipeg and the, possible Vezina Trophy winner in Connor Hellebuyck. This is the one series I do wonder if I could be wrong about, to be honest. I can see Winnipeg being good enough to take the Avalanche down. They've beaten them a few times in the regular season. But like I said, this Avalanche team is different now. They've made some moves, but so was Winnipeg. They added some more scoring with Tyler Toffoli, which has worked out well. Sean Monahan joined the Jets a little bit earlier ahead of the deadline. He's been a good fit there as well. They're definitely deeper, stronger offensively. They will give the Avs a really good run, but I still think our conference final in the West is going to be McDavid against McKinnon, Edmonton versus Colorado. But, like I said, I think teams like Winnipeg and Vegas will have something to say about this, and I wouldn't be shocked if it goes a different way. But I really would like to see a McDavid versus McKinnon matchup here in the Western Conference Final. Assuming those two teams do meet in the final, I'm going to pick Edmonton again. I know I've stuck with the Oilers since the very beginning before the season started. They were my Cup winner selection before the season started. At the very least, I picked them to go to the finals every time that I've done a prediction since. I still believe in them. They've gotten better. They made additions. The Avalanche would give them a really, really good run. I think it'd be tough. I think goaltending would be pretty comparable. Defensively, I think there might be some similarities. It's going to boil down to offense, really. And I guess, McKinnon is pretty tough to stop. You get Makar, who's, the next probably best offensive player on that team. It's really going to be close. I really think that both teams would probably be a high-scoring series. I mean, I know playoffs, typically you see the scoring go down. I don't know that it would in this case. I think we could see some higher-scoring events here in the Western Conference playoffs, assuming that teams like the Avalanche and the Oilers, for them to be successful, I think they're going to have to be able to continue to produce at a higher rate. So, tight series, not a lot of differences based on how they're built. I do like the Avalanche, probably blue line a little bit better, though, so it's tough to say for sure. But I'm going to pick the Oilers. Again, it's really, really hard. These last three, like after round one, I wouldn't be surprised if any of them went a different way. But again, we don't know for sure these are going to be the matchups. These are just the matchups as of today. So right now I have the Oilers representing the Western Conference in the final. Let's go to the Eastern Conference and take a look at their breakdown. Based on their standings, we'd have a first round of the Bruins against the Red Wings. Right now the Red Wings sit in wild card 2, but again, that's not guaranteed. They have the Islanders and the Capitals nipping at their heels. So we'll see if they can hang on for that spot. Right now, that would be their first playoff appearance in some time. That would give us the New York Rangers would be the number 2 seed, winner of the Metro Division, take on wildcard 1, which would be the Tampa Bay Lightning. We'd have the Florida Panthers doing battle with the Toronto Maple Leafs in the 2-3 spot in the Atlantic, and the Hurricanes against the Flyers as the 2-3 spot in the Metro. So starting with your Metro Division playoffs here, the Rangers against the Lightning, who would cross over to compete on that part of the bracket. I would pick the New York Rangers to be victorious here, but again, I think Tampa would give them a good run. I think Tampa's running out of steam, though. You got Vasilevsky against Shesterkin. Assuming Igor is certainly going to get the net come playoff time, and I think right now that they would go there. I think at the very least he starts. If he falters, they have Quick, who's been really good to turn to. But overall, the Rangers have a little bit more youth on their side. They haven't played. Obviously last year wasn't quite good for the Rangers. 2 years back, of course, they did have a deeper run. But at the same time, Tampa has played a ton of hockey the last 3 or 4 years. These guys showed last year they went out in the first round against the Leafs. I'm not really sure that this team is better than last year. If anything, I think they've regressed a little bit more. I think the Rangers can take them down, but I can see the Lightning squeezing out at least a game or two to make this an interesting series. Carolina against Philly. I honestly don't think that would be close. I think the Hurricanes would take down the Flyers with relative ease. 4 or 5 games. Carolina would be stronger pretty much in all aspects of the game. There's a possibility the Flyers don't hang on to that spot. If they don't, though, it could greatly change the whole playoff dynamic in the matchups here. But right now, we'll see what they do. I just don't know that. I know they've been a bit of a surprise team, but at the same time, as much as they've been better than expected, a lot of those teams in the Metro have been not as good and worse than expected. We knew the Penguins were going to take probably a step back, but were they really going to be that bad? No, we didn't think so. I knew the Caps would be lower in the standings this year too, but were they going to be barely hanging on? Not really. The Islanders, were the Devils going to be where they are? The Devils are probably the biggest surprise. They've taken by far the biggest step back. I did have Pittsburgh and Washington likely missing the playoffs, but the Flyers I had, I think, right down with Columbus. So I would have had the Rangers, the Hurricanes, and the Devils being the top 3, with probably one between Pittsburgh, the Islanders, and the Capitals, one of those being a wildcard team, and I probably gave the edge, I believe, to the Islanders. And I probably would still have made the same thing knowing what we know now, but Philly's been an interesting case this year, but the Hurricanes would take them down in relative ease. So that would set up round 2 to be Rangers against the Hurricanes. Now, this series, I think the Hurricanes again would have the advantage. We've seen the Carolina Hurricanes make some really good deadline moves. Jake Gensel and Evgeny Kuznetsov has fit in extremely well. I really think that the Carolina Hurricanes now have their game breaker with goal scorer. They've been missing an extra top goal scorer like Gensel. I think he'll be that guy. Kuznetsov is on a redemption tour. Over time, his role is only going to get bigger. We know if he's happy, healthy, and contributing, he can be a really good player. And I think he still has lots to give, and he's shown that so far. So I really like what they've done here. I really think defensively, I like the Hurricanes better. I do think that goaltending could be, maybe questionable. The Carolina Hurricanes have gone through a lot of goalies this year, but they've gotten good results from a lot of them too. Ranta probably the weakest of them all, which is why he's not, on a big roster right now. But I think the Carolina Hurricanes definitely would beat the Rangers. So the Hurricanes would represent round 3, that part of the bracket of the Metro. On the Eastern, so Atlantic side, you'd have Boston, Detroit, Florida, Toronto. I think the Red Wings would probably lose to the Bruins. I think Boston would take down Detroit. I don't have a lot of confidence in Boston, to be completely honest. I really don't. I do wonder how they've played the second half of the season. Are they running out of steam? Are they maybe not as good as they showed in the first half? A lot of people thought the Bruins were going to be taking a bigger step back this year. They're not on the historical pace they were last year, but they're still a first-place team, which is surprising. I know I picked them to be lower in the standings, and they're, again, like I said, when I made those predictions, it's really tough to go against the Bruins because they always seem to find a way, which they've done again. But what we've seen in the second half of the year is you wonder if they're really that team. And I think with a different opponent, I think they might lose in the first round, to be honest, even though they're a first-place club. But if they hang on to win this division and they get a wildcard team like Detroit, I think they can win the series. Otherwise, if they happen to drop a bit and Florida passes them, which is very possible, and they play a team like the Leafs, I do think that there's a better chance that they won't win. But their goaltending will give them every opportunity to hang around and be successful. But I would pick Boston over Detroit. A lot of other teams I may not. Florida versus Toronto. Florida proved last year they are much better than the Leafs. They've been proving it through the regular season in the standings. I honestly don't think the Leafs can beat the Panthers. The Leafs will be out for revenge after losing last year. And not only losing, but losing handily at that. Especially after the Toronto fans were heard outside of their arena when they were beating the Lightning saying, "We want Florida." Well, I think they regret it wanting Florida, and they might get them again. This team is just as good, if not better, than last year. I'm not sure that Toronto is. Toronto's still a really good hockey team. And obviously, besides teams like Florida and Boston, they've been the best. Definitely a top three in the Atlantic. They have lots of firepower there. They've had some goaltending up and downs this year. Who's getting the net in game one? That's a bit tricky to answer right now. The decor's had its moments where it's been decent, but it's had its moments where you wonder if they have enough there to be playoff successful. I don't know. I think Florida takes down Toronto. Maybe Toronto pushes it a little further than it did last year, but not enough to get over the hump and take them down in a 7-game series. So that would give us a Bruins versus Panthers second round. I honestly think that Florida would also beat Boston, as I said, again, against Detroit. A lot of other teams, if they face the Bruins in the first round, I would pick them to beat the Bruins. And Florida, again, would beat Boston, I do believe. You'd have Rat against Rat with Marchand against Tkachuk, which would be fun and interesting. Obviously, the goaltending of Swayman and Ullmark against Bobrovsky would be interesting. I do think the Bruins can make it interesting. I don't think it'll be a blowout by any means, but I do think the Panthers take down the Bruins. And they go on to play the Hurricanes in the Eastern Conference Final. Now, the last few times we've made predictions, I've predicted Florida was likely to be the best team in the East and play for the Cup again. I'm not so sure about that now. With the additions that the Hurricanes have made, if it turned out to be a Florida versus Carolina Eastern Final, I honestly believe I would pick the Hurricanes to win. You add the additions that they've made there. I know Florida's kind of tweaked things a bit too at the deadline, but I honestly think that the additions in Carolina are more significant. I think Gensel and Kuznetsov will be more impactful there than you will see like Okposo and Tarasenko in Florida. Florida's still a really good team. I think it'd be really interesting. Obviously, injuries at this point, after going through a long 82-game regular season and a couple of playoff rounds, will definitely play a key role in who's healthier. But the way the Hurricanes forecheck and the strong defensive play, well coached with Rod Brind'Amour, I think they win, and they go on to play for the Cup against the Edmonton Oilers. So we have a rematch of, 2006, I believe it was, when they met in the final all those years ago, and Carolina won their one and only Stanley Cup. And I think they're going to do it again. I don't think the Oilers would be able to get through. This is the one team defensively that I think can stop the high-powered Oilers. I've been picking the Oilers all year to win the Cup for the most part here. And this is the one time I had to maybe reconsider against other teams. I honestly think the Oilers would beat Florida. But I don't know if they can beat Carolina. I think they're just the matchup and how the teams are structured a little bit differently. I don't think that does not favor Edmonton. I think the Oilers would be outdueled in goaltending. I think they would be greatly outdueled defensively. The forecheck alone was going to help slow down their offensive game. And I think the Carolina Hurricanes probably take it in at most a 6-game series. I really do. So at this rate, if these teams were in the standings the way they are today and these were the matchups, I do believe the Carolina Hurricanes would be your 2024 NHL Stanley Cup champions. So we'll probably go through this again in a few weeks as the standings change, the matchups change. It's always just for fun. I'm not holding myself to these predictions because it's really, really hard to do. And like I said, it's just a fun exercise. So let me know your thoughts based on today's standings. Who would be your 2024 Stanley Cup champions? Let me know your thoughts on that. Down in the comments, we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.